Alright, so let's continue. So just a side note that it's been, I guess, 24 hours since I last recorded the video for this application. I was actually having some issues with the screen recorder OBS that I'm using, and it turns out to be that when I click on an input field which is of type password, the hotkeys fail to work, like somehow they just stop. And it's actually a very bad user experience that they do not provide this sort of information anywhere online. But anyway, after wasting about, I guess, I'm not kidding, I think 9 to 10 hours trying to figure out what exactly is the issue, I do have the solution. Like I now I do know what was happening. Anyway, let's continue. So we added the authentication, at least for the sign up. So now anyone can sign up by providing the email and password, and we have the same thing being listed within the Firebase console. So I think that's it for the home page, at least for now. Later we will be coming back to it and we're going to add the other things such as the signing in of the user, few validations, and the error catching, loading the loader state, and all the other stuff which goes over here. Anyway, the other thing is that Firebase uses indexed DB. It's a browser based storage database which the Firebase uses in order to store the information about the logged in user. So over here, IndexedDB, we have the Firebase local storage DB, within which we have a single entry over here containing the information about the logged in user. So what we need to do is, now we will be working on the internal page because we have the user, we have everything set up. Now we can actually work on the internal page, which is the accounts screen over here. But before we get to it, there's other thing. We need to add certain route guards. So when the user is authenticated, which means that they just signed up, and in that case they will be automatically signed in, which means that they are authenticated, we need to push the user to the account screen that we have over here. So for this, we are going to make use of a function from the auth service of Firebase, this auth service. So let's get to the app component where we have all the different routes. Over here we can import the auth service, and on the auth service we have a function with the name of onAuthStateChanged. So this function is used to add an observer which listens to the user's sign-in state, which means that whenever the sign-in state changes, whether the user just signed in or they signed out, this function will be called, the function which we have to pass in over here. And it's going to receive the user object as the first argument. So if the user is authenticated, in that case, the first argument will be the information or the user object, say. It's going to be the user. Otherwise, if they are not signed in, they are not authenticated, this thing will be null. So we have to save this value within a local state inside the app component, so that we can make sure that the user is seeing the right screen. So for this, let's first import two things from React. We first need to have the useState in order to create the component based state, and the other thing is the useEffect hook. So over here we first need to create a state. Let's do that. We can give it the name of user and the function to be setUser. By default we can set it to be null. Now the other thing is we have to register this observer, and we just want to register it one time when the application is loaded. So for this we will be using the useEffect hook. So useEffect hook takes in a function as an argument, and this function will be called whenever this component re-renders, like whenever anything changes on this component. So as we just want to register the observer only one time, which is the very first one, the first time, we will be using the second argument, which is an array, and it is referred as dependency array. So you can provide all the different values inside of this array, and in any, like if any of those values changes, like if any of those value change, it's going to recall this function. It's going to call this function that we have over here. So we are going to pass in an empty array just so that this function is called only one time. And inside of it, we can register the observer in such a way. So this set user, we are going to make use of it in order to update the state. So we will be getting the user, and we can use the set user and pass in the user in such a way. And let me just log the user to the console, and at the same time we can remove it from the home screen. If we do that, let's just get back, refresh. As you can see, for the very first time, as the value was null, we have the same thing, and this is coming from the app component. Then the observer was registered, and it checked, it was notified that the user is actually authenticated, and then it called this function with the user object, and we used the same to update the state that we have over here. So now that we have the user within the app component, we can add the route guards. So a route guard is something which, based upon some condition, decides whether or not the user should be seeing a screen, whether or not they should be able to, we can say they should be able to navigate to a path. So for this, we first need to import the redirect component from React Router DOM. So over here, what we need to do is, if the user is authenticated, then it doesn't make any sense that they should be seeing the home page. They should be automatically redirected to the account page, and the other way around for the account page. If the user is not authenticated, we obviously do not want them to see the account screen. So for this, we can wrap the entire thing inside of an expression. We have the user over here. We will check that if there is a user using the ternary operator. So if there is a user, which means that the user is authenticated, in that case, we want to redirect. We will be using the redirect component, passing in the to prop, specifying the path, in this case the account. If the user is authenticated, we want to redirect them to the account path, the account screen. Otherwise, they can see the home page, obviously. And the same thing for the account screen over here. If the user is authenticated, in that case, they can obviously see the account screen as they are kind of trying to navigate to it. Otherwise, if that's not the case, we want to redirect them to the root of our application, the home page. So if we do that, as we are currently authenticated, as you can see, we were automatically pushed to the account screen, which is perfect. Now we have added the route guards, and this will make sure that the user is on the right screen. And as you can see, for a few milliseconds, like we are actually able to see the home page. So the thing is that as the default value is null, so even before this observer is registered, like even before it is notified about the logged in state, this thing is null, which means that like if they try to visit the home page, they will be there for a few milliseconds. So in order to fix this, what we can do is, now this is a neat hack. We will be creating another state, and we're going to name it as initial load, and the function to be set initial load. So this initial load will be true by default. Let me just move this thing. So this state will be true by default, and we will be setting it to be false when this function is first run, this thing. So now using the set initial load right over here, we can set it to be false as such. So now using this thing, we can actually show a loader, and for that there is a component which the material UI library provides, and it goes by the name of circular progress over here. So let's also import the box, so just so that we can kind of align it in a proper way. And right over here, like even before we return the actual content, the entire application, we can check that if the initial load is true, which means that this thing is not yet called. This thing is not yet called, the observer is not registered, and it's still like it still needs to check the auth state. If this is the case, then we want to return back a box component within which we can wrap the circular progress as such. And in order to align it in a proper way, let's add some margin to the top of about 5, and we can set the display to be of flex and justify content to be of center, just so that it's in the center somewhere around here. So I think that's it. Let's take a look. Homepage, as you can see, we have the loader, which is perfect. We have it for a few milliseconds, maybe for a second, and after this function is the observer is like registered, it checks, the user is passed in, it sets the value to be false. So the user can even be unauthenticated, which means that like they are not logged in, and even then it's going to kind of work perfectly fine. Anyway, I think that's it for the route cards, and now we can actually start working on the account screen.